Amanda, your chamber was involved in a local charter amendment, and I know you're no stranger to advocacy work. You teach us a lot about it. And what we wanted to do today is if you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what did your chamber do? And obviously, we're always interested in what can we replicate and scale around the state. So glad you're in Florida. Glad you're on the program today, and looking forward to what you have to share with us. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. And you're always so kind. Your introduction's very kind. I appreciate it. I am a public policy dork. I think you either love this world or you hate it. And I clearly fell in love with it several years ago, and really was able to bring that experience to the local chamber. And I believe that it's our job in our communities to really grow elected leaders, to grow that next generation. We all have our leadership programs. We all have the ways that we engage with our communities. But I do believe that it's our job to represent the business community, and part of that is to deepen the bench in elected leadership within our business community. So I brought that to Amplify Clearwater, excited to grow that side of the organization. We do have a PAC. I think I may have mentioned before to this group. We do engage in local elections and state offices, and we do support. So we we draw that line in the sand and say that we support pro-business candidates. And I'm happy to say that we had a very high success rate in the general election. All but one of our candidates that we endorsed were elected to public office. So pleased to work with the Florida Chamber, and many of those we co-endorse together and share in those endorsements, and pleased to work with the Florida Chamber in that regard. Also on our ballot this year for the general election, we had a referendum to develop our bluff properties, our waterfront properties here in Clearwater, and we needed 50% plus one vote. And from a business community perspective, we really saw it as an opportunity to change our downtown, to invest in economic development, to take prime property, and really change what we've known Clearwater to be historically. You know, Clearwater is kind of this sleepy city in Pinellas County, and really had a lot of opportunity for growth and economic development and job creation. So our board stepped out, took a position on this referendum, and we were able to kind of lead the charge alongside another group called Yes for Clearwater, and really be that touch point for sharing of information, promoting through social media. We had signs here in the office that we kept and distributed, as well as any marketing materials. And we really kept the issue forefront and in front of our local, city voters. We were concerned about ballot fatigue. It was the very last thing on the ballot. And for those of us that all showed up and voted on November 8th, we realized when he handed me 3 pages, I said, this is a really long ballot. So we really needed folks to get to the very bottom of that ballot. And that was really our message, to continue all the way to the end and vote yes for Clearwater. We were incredibly successful. We won with 67%. So given that that's a local referendum and not everyone shows up and hangs around that long and gets to the bottom of the ballot, we were able to be successful in the message, be successful in the communication, really connect with our, city voters, which is not always easy to do as well, using a variety of methods, but really printed pieces, the local newspapers, social media, and really engaging one-on-one, and kind of that basic grassroots kind of effort that you learn through a campaign process. So it's one of those examples of how a local chamber really can be effective and really change the dynamics of their city, certainly their local government, be a partner in local government for economic development. And I'm very proud that we have a board and we have a community that embraces our chamber being a leader in those conversations. Mark, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I was on mute. I did that to myself there. Amanda, thanks so very much for that. A question for you. A lot of chambers are asking, we have ballot initiatives in Florida. In fact, we already have a $10 million initiative making its way to the 2024 ballot on legalizing drugs. And so we're gonna be involved in that, obviously, in the opposition to that. But with 411 cities and 67 counties, these amendments at the local level, ballot initiatives, are sometimes gain steam, especially when, after all the work we've done at the state level to really crack down on the paid-for, out-of-state signature gathering business, we didn't have a single one on the 2022 ballot this year. So the reforms are working, obviously. But what we're seeing is these groups that want to pass change at the ballot box are going to be going local. So you were behind one that made a lot of sense for your community and for the business community. What advice would you have for your peers, our peers around the state who might be thinking of, 2024 is coming up, are there local initiatives that can only be done through the local initiative process? What can we learn from what you've done?
Well, I think it's important to always, we always look at things through the lens of, is this good for growth and job creation, right? Economic development and job creation. And that's what we try to put the lens on in everything that we do and we support. And I think that's incredibly important as a chamber. We have to remember that there's some things that we do uniquely well, and then there's other things that our community does uniquely well. And as chambers, continuing to promote job creation and diversification in our economic development is really our role in protecting and developing the business community. So my advice is always use that lens, right? When you're talking about whatever the issue may be, always use that lens and analyzing whether or not it's the right space for your chamber to step into. And in addition to that, what I learned through a campaign process is that grassroots wins. And we lost, and a couple of years ago, we actually lost a referendum in development for some light industrial property. And what I learned through that process is that there was a very grassroots effort against it. I'm talking grassroots effort where people literally painted on the windows of their car. And that sometimes may be, and I would see them on my drive to work every morning. And sometimes that may seem like that's not effective, but actually that can be more effective than the business community sometimes can be. We look at it very professionally and we approach things from a marketing point of view. I think sometimes having that emotional connection actually becomes a better and more effective strategy and approach. So I think thinking about it in terms of, if this is your neighbor, if it's having that more emotional drive to have a successful outcome, and really in that very grassroots, getting out and going door to door, just those very basic things you do in a campaign that are incredibly effective even today, are the things that you need to think about and put into an action plan.
So Amanda, thanks. My last question I have before I close this out is the issue itself that you were advocating for, just out of curiosity, could it only have been done through the charter process, or was it something the city or the county could have done by a vote?
They could not. It had to be done because it is city-owned property, and because of the price tag and development associated with it, it had to go through the referendum process. It had no other option.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway. Our policy at the Florida Chamber with constitutional amendments is, no matter what the subject is, if it can be done by the legislature, we would oppose it being done by referendum. And I think that's, as people start looking at 411 cities, 67 counties, I think it would be important for chambers to take a look at sort of the governance concept behind, if your city council won't pass something that's in their purview, is it a good or a bad idea to go around them and try to put it on the ballot? We're obviously very opposed to that concept. That's the California model. And when everything's up for a popular vote, as we're learning in national politics right now, populism is not necessarily the same as what's good for local businesses and communities. So I just put that out there, and I'm glad to hear that yours was something that could only be done that way. Amanda, anything else that you would want to share? I'm so appreciative of your time. I know it takes 5 times as much time to prep for these as it does to deliver, so we certainly appreciate it.
Well, I always appreciate having me, and I always appreciate the opportunity to see you, Mark. And I just want to thank you for your leadership and your team. Andrew and I were in touch on election day. I always call him because I feel like it's the most exciting day of the year for that crowd, and for me as well. So I just want to say thank you to you and your team, and for all the communication and work you do on our behalf.
Well, absolutely, Amanda. We've all got great teams, and when we all work together, I think that's what our business community wants.